Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just let everyone get on board to log in. We'll start at 1 p.m. Sorry for rescheduling from yesterday. Still recovering from cold and flu, unfortunately. So please apologies for snuffles. I have a box of tissues at hand and medicinal cup of tea. A little bit, Daniel, thanks. Yep. Spent pretty much all of Monday in bed. A sinus headache. Yep, so guys, if you're watching, leave a comment below. I'll try and say hi to you. Seven people on just now. That's good. I've got my iPad down the side so I can see all the comments. And I look rather far away. I think the zoom on my camera seems to have panned out a bit, but that's all right. All good. Neil, hello to yourself. Thanks for tuning in. And Paul, hello again. Nice to have you guys in. I get very lonely, you see. It's one of the good reasons for doing these little talks, these little webinars. And it keeps you engaged with the community. Jean, hello to you. Joey J. Oh yeah, thanks. I hope I recover soon too. So one thing about being a parent is you don't really have the luxury of being sick. You got to get on with things. And my poor wife took up the slack over the last couple of days, and now she's got the sniffles too. And the whole family went down to get tested on Monday for the COVID-19, and thankfully we got negative results, came back on Wednesday, which is good. So we're all just loaded up with the cold and flu just now at various levels. Okay, 1 o'clock. Here we go. Let's see if I can make this bigger. That's better. Let's go on track. I've got quite a bit to cover in this one. So let's get into it. What I'll do is I'll go through the slide. Then I'll come back and see if there's any questions in the comments and try and address those towards the end. Okay, so hi and welcome to WPQuickies series. These are bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. And today I'm going to be starting what I hope is the first in a series of WordPress security quickies. And this one is specifically on security plugins. But before we get started in that, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ding the bell, just so you get notified of all the new videos when we post them. Okay, what are we going to look at today? Some reasons why you need a security plugin. I probably don't need to cover these because you guys know why you should need a security plugin, but we'll go over these anyway. What are the top security plugins out there just now, and my favorite two, and we'll go through some of the differences about what they do, some pros and cons. So let's get right into it. Why would you need a security plugin? Well, I'll just copy this link into the comments below. So according to a 2017 survey from sitelock.com, so it's a few years ago, but it's still pretty relevant. They worked out that websites, not WordPress websites, just websites in general, are attacked on average 44 times per day. So that was 3 years ago, and I can only imagine that numbers are larger. And with WordPress powering 33% of all websites, or at least all the top 100 million websites, it has a huge target painted on its back. It always has. It's always been one of the most popular CMSs. So yeah, so it's a big target out there for hackers. So if you're running WordPress, you know you are in the sight, in the target of those bad actors. And even if one of those attacks is successful, it's not only going to damage your website, but your business and your reputations as well. So I'm not going to cover all the negative things that could happen if your site was breached. You can conjure your own nightmares for those. So let's just concentrate on the security plugins and see what they are and what they do. Okay, so what are the top security plugins on the market just now? So in the comments, I have just pasted a whole bunch of links to these ones specifically here. So the top ones that I think are on the market just now, Wordfence, Security, iThemes Security, Bulletproof Security, and all-in-one WP Security and Firewall. Now, there's lots of other plugins that have security parts in it, but none are completely focused on security. And that's what I'm going to cover today. So one I should mention, though, that I've left out of here is Jetpack. Jetpack, it has its pros and its cons. Personally, I am of the opinion that if you have a plugin, it should do one thing and one thing really well. Jetpack does a billion things. Most of them very well, but you know, I don't like the fact that it's all bundled in with the one plugin that does everything. They have security measures in Jetpack, and they have actually just as of this week announced like a deep scanning security thing for files and malware. Again, all built into Jetpack. So if you are a Jetpack user, you might want to look at the security aspects of Jetpack separately from the other stuff that it provides. But my personal preference is I would not install Jetpack just to get at the security features, because it comes with too much other stuff that's just got nothing to do with security. But that's my humble opinion. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're not going to cover all of these plugins today, and there's no demo today. Sorry, it's just me talking. We're just going to cover what my favorite two security plugins are, what they offer, the pros and cons, and some of their differences as well. So my top two are Wordfence and Security. No surprise there. I have been a long time Wordfence user. I really like it. I know the developers there. I've contributed to bugs and stuff. Wordfence has its ups. It's had its downs. I think a couple of years ago they decided, because of the way it works and looking at files for malware, it has to build a cache of files so it can compare stuff. And they thought it was a good idea to build a cache plugin into Wordfence. You know, not just security, but caching pages like W3 Super Cache or WP Rocket, that sort of thing. And again, it comes down to my mantra is I think a plugin should do one thing and one thing well. So there was a bit of to-ing and froing, and I abandoned Wordfence for a while and moved over to Security. But once they came to their senses and got rid of caching and went back to Security, then I went back to Wordfence, gave it a try, and yeah, so I use that a lot on my client websites. And we'll go through some of the reasons why you'd use some of them differently in a bit. So Jean, yeah, they're your two favorite security plugins too. That's great. And Maurice, hello. Sorry, I missed you. Hello to you too. Okay, so let's have a look at what these things do. Okay, yeah, not quite there yet. Okay, so some of the things that Wordfence does. Let's look at Wordfence first. So Wordfence has a free and pro versions of the plugin. So for the free version, which I run on the majority of sites, because I think that's all I really need, it has a built-in software firewall. Now, what that means is people who are coming to your website, visiting your page URLs, Wordfence is going to actively look at what they're doing within that and try and get rid of any bad or malicious things like MySQL embedding, cross XSS, cross script certificate injections. So all the sort of things that people try and spoof into the URLs to try and get access into your website, Wordfence will look at those and block them first. So blocking the SQL, blocking the JavaScript if they think it's bad. So that's basically what a software firewall does. It's a software version of the hardware computers that most of the big hosting companies run. So Wordfence also, it protects against brute force attacks. And it does this by limiting the number of failed login attempts. And you can set the timeouts and the numbers within the settings to whatever you think works for your website. But essentially, it monitors the number of times that somebody's logging in and getting a failed response. So that's called a brute force, when somebody's trying your username and password combination a lot. And it does this basically by locking out the IP address, as simple as that. So if it finds that somebody's doing a login 10 times really quickly and failing, then it'll just ban that IP address. Now you can whitelist IP addresses if you like. If you've got several clients that need access, you can certainly whitelist their IP address for that. But brute force is quite a big issue with websites just now. It's not normally humans that are sitting typing away. It's all these large botnets that they have that will just roam around, look at WordPress websites, and then just try and hammer the admin password, username and password. And that's back in ye old days when we had cPanel scripts that would install WordPress with the default admin username. Thankfully, those don't exist anymore, but there's still hundreds, thousands of websites that haven't been updated that still use that old admin username. So it's quite often, if you'll go to Wordfence in the morning, have a look at the logs, you'll just see all these thousands of attempts to try and guess the password for the admin user, even if it doesn't exist. So Wordfence does a good job at protecting against brute force attacks. And again, you can tweak the settings for your particular specific site. As I said, it blocks threats by IP address. And the good thing about Wordfence is it runs and scans local server files for malware as well. So the free version does it once per day. I don't think you can set the time. Maybe you can. I can't quite remember. But it will scan your files once per day. And the default is to look at just WordPress files. You can, in the settings, tell it to scan for files outside WordPress, and a lot of my clients do have other files that they use outside the WordPress core for uploads, PDFs, manuals, that sort of stuff. So you can ask Wordfence to scan those too, just in case. And there's even an option where you can tick to scan images for potential threats. Now, sometimes bad actors, hackers, they'll try and upload malware in all different types of formats. I mean, you wouldn't really expect when you open a JPEG or a PNG or a GIF that's going to contain malware. And that's exactly what the bad actors are looking for. So if you are paranoid, or if you've had that in the past, you can certainly click on that option in Wordfence to tell it to do a deep scan of images as they were normal script files. And Wordfence will do that for you. Another good thing that Wordfence does is it can scan your WordPress core, theme, and plugin files against the WordPress.org repository. So it can look for a difference. So if you've got, say, 2020 theme installed and you're using that, it will look at your theme files on your server. It'll look at those up in the repository, and it'll note any differences and flag that to you. So that could be a great pre-warning that something has changed in your files that's not quite right. So I really do like that particular setting in Wordfence. It's really good. The good thing about that as well is you can actually replace a specific file. So if it's found that something's wrong with a CSS file in a theme that's in the repository, you can go into the Wordfence settings and just click a button that can actually pull down that single file from the WordPress repo and replace your local file to make it exactly match what you have in the repository. So I think that's a great feature, and I've used that countless numbers of times. Other things that it does that I quite like, it enforces strong passwords for users. So if you have multiple people logging into your WordPress website, you might have a membership site or an e-commerce site for recurring buyers, you can make sure that they are putting strong passwords in as well. So it's great that you have a strong password, but if you're letting other people to register on your website, you will have to make sure that they have strong passwords as well. And WordPress out of the box, it does a reasonable job of secure passwords, but it doesn't do a great job. So Wordfence here can really embrace that and help. And of course, it's got general website hardening tools, including 2FA, two-factor authentication now. It's a relatively recent addition. So that's what's included in the free version. If you want to upgrade to the Pro version, I'll drop a link in the comments here just now. There we go. There's a link to the premium version for Wordfence. It is, as of today, $99 US per year for a single site. You can save if you've got multiple sites by buying multi-licenses. And what you're getting from that is real-time threat updates, the firewall and the scanner. So in the free version, you get updates, but only every 30 days. So if there's a major issue, a major potential threat out there for plugins and themes, Wordfence will be aware of that. They'll add that to the rules for their firewall and for their scanner. But if you're running free, you won't get that until 30 days. If you pay, you'll get that in real time. As well as the Pro, you get a blacklist URL and IP checker to make sure that your site and URLs aren't blacklisted. Country blocking as well, so you can block particular countries out. You get access to support tickets as well. What isn't included, unfortunately, is if your website is hacked, you have to still pay to get that all cleaned up. And there's a link to that in the comments. So they charge $179 US per one time to clean up your site, even if you're on the Pro version. Okay, so that's pretty much Wordfence covered. Let's have a look at security and see what that does. So again, security, it has a free version and a Pro version as well. The free version, it doesn't have a built-in software firewall, and we'll look at the reason for that in a couple of minutes. So there's no built-in firewall like there is in Wordfence. However, it does have a remote malware scanning tool, and I'll drop the link in here. So it uses a tool that's on the security site. In fact, it's called SiteCheck.security.net. I've just dropped that link in the comments there. And it will look through your website. It will scan your website URLs for any malware that's embedded in the website. So very different from how Wordfence works. So it's a remote one, so it doesn't scan local files. Here's another link in the comments if you're interested in exactly how that SiteCheck works and how it detects malware. Go and have a read of that blog, and I'll just describe exactly how it works as a remote scanner. So as well as included in the free one is a blacklist URL IP and checker. So that's a little bit different. You have to pay to get that in Wordfence, and for the security plugin, it's free. It also logs activity in the cloud. So things like user logins, what the user is doing, edit posts, any updates for plugins and themes, all that sort of stuff installs. It will store that information in the security cloud servers for forensic auditing during and post-hack. The good thing about this is it's not storing stuff in your local machine. It's not adding to your database. So therefore, it's not increasing any of your database tables. It's not having any performance issue as well, writing and reading from the database. So that's definitely a good tick for that one. There is a file integrity checker. It's not a malware scanner like Wordfence. What it does is when you activate the security plugin, it takes a snapshot of all the files within the WordPress folder. And it basically does a hash check. If you don't know what hash is, you can look that up. But it basically creates a map of what the files are like when you activate the plugin. And what it does periodically, it will check your files against that state that it took. And if anything changes, then it'll bring that to your attention and say, hey, look, this file has changed. It's a little bit different from when I first scanned it. You might want to have a look at that. So that's the integrity checker. It just has a look at file changes and brings those to your attention. It doesn't do a malware scan per se like Wordfence, but it certainly is a useful thing to have. And with Wordfence as well, it has general WordPress security and website hardening tools built in, like passwords, complex and things like that. So that's the free version of Security. The pro version of Security, let me just drop that link in here if you're looking to go down that route. There's the website address for the pro version. It is $199.99 US dollar cents per year per single site. And what that gets you is a cloud-based website application firewall. They call it a WAF. Now, that's the same thing that Wordfence does on your local machine. It's just looking at URLs that are coming into your website and looking for malware embedded in that, and SQL injections and cross-script references, all that sort of stuff. But it's doing it in the cloud, not on the local machine. So that's what you get for that money, for like $200 US, a cloud-based WAF. Including that price as well, you get a CDN for performance. So you can use that CDN to offload your scripts and your images, and you're going to get performance for your website. So a CDN like Cloudflare is included in that price. But with the CDN as well, it's also tuned for intrusion detection. If it finds that something's a bit dodgy, according to some rules, then it can stop those inbound URLs, those inbound requests to your website. And also, with a CDN, it's pretty much the only way you can get around DDoS. That's direct distributed attacks. So including that price for the CDN is really good for security. We'll have a look at how that works in a little bit. As well, including the pro version, is malware removal. So if your website does get hacked, or if it does find some malware on your site, included in that price is an SLA, is malware removal. And that's unlimited for that entire year. So it's not a once-off. So if your site gets hacked 3 times, 4 times, 100 times, hopefully it doesn't get hacked 100 times, but however many times within that price, Security as a company will go into your website, clean that malware and remove it as many times as needed. So that's the difference between the free and the pro version, and between Security and Wordfence. But let's have a look at some of the main differences between the two plugins. So the big difference is that Security is a cloud-based security service, and Wordfence is a local security-based service. So let's have a look at some of the pros and cons of cloud-based security and then local-based security. So with Security being a cloud-based security, some of the pros is you don't actually need a plugin to be installed on WordPress. It does everything remotely. So Security manages all that within their cloud servers. And that really means that the performance of your machine is great. So you're not getting any performance drain on the plugin, on the database, or your site or your server. It's all offloaded up into the cloud, which is a definite pro. It's also preventative as well. So instead of waiting until something hits your website, hits your server, and then performing an action, it can look at stuff before it actually hits your server. So it's preventative. And if it finds bad URLs, bad intentions, it then just stops that from even hitting your server in the first place. So preventative security is really, really useful. And another pro for this is the CDN. The CDN is fantastic in its own right for speeding up your website, but it really is the best way to mitigate DDoS attacks. So distributed denial of service attacks. That's where you get a whole big botnet, hundreds, thousands of computers that are directed to send requests at your server to basically swamp it. It can't respond in enough time, so therefore your website goes down. With a CDN though, because all the requests are distributed over the CDN network, when DDSs are hitting, all the Cloudflare servers are not directly at your server. So it offloads that DDoS attack. And it really is the only way to mitigate a DDoS attack at the moment. Some of the cons with cloud-based security is, well, it can kind of miss malware that gets onto your server in other ways. So it's just really looking at the URLs of your website, not the actual files system itself. So if you're uploading stuff with cPanel, FTP, SSH, then that's not going to get scanned by this particular cloud-based security. I think we've got cloud-based, yeah. So there we've got a image of the cloud-based security there. So it can miss stuff that's uploaded on the server in other ways, not through a URL. So that can be a bit of a con. You also have to pay for the web application firewall itself. It's not free, so it's at $200 US. And technically, the WAF can actually be bypassed if your bad actors know your server IP address. They can just bypass that whole thing, the whole CDN, the whole network, and get directly at your machine. So there's definitely a con aspect there. But let's look at local-based security system like Wordfence. Okay, so there's an image. These images are from Kinsta, by the way. Thank you, guys. Local-based security. So some of the pros for that is a deep-level file scanning. So unlike the cloud-based, when you've got a local-based system, it can really have a look at all the files that are on the server and do a really good low-level deep scan to make sure there's no malware embedded in those files, which can't be done with the cloud-based one at all. It provides full end-to-end encryption. What do I mean by that? Because it's installed locally, you're not leaving your website at all. So there's nowhere that data coming out of your website when it's being scanned. So therefore, there's no issue with data being hacked, looked at, being leaked at. And we call that full end-to-end encryption. With Wordfence, it is a free web application firewall. So you do have that free. It's not, you don't have to pay for it. It's embedded in there. So that's definitely a pro for that particular local-based security. And it can't be bypassed. I mean, there's nowhere else to go. It hits your machine, it's on your machine, so therefore it has to go through that security level. Some of the cons for a local-based security. And one of the biggest cons is security performance. So scanning files takes up a huge resource. And if you've got a lot of files there, if you've been using WordPress for many, many years, then it's going to take a long time to go through each file individually. So the bigger site you have, the more files you have, you're going to see that server performance really, really ramp up when Wordfence starts to do its local file-based scan. And you'll see that in your activity logs, your server activity logs. If you log into cPanel or if you use New Relic or anything, you'll see the level will hum along, and then just say it scans at 3 a.m., it jumps right up to the ceiling. And it'll do that for as long as it needs to scan every single file. So obviously a major negative there in performance. And another negative is it cannot stand up to those DDoS attacks. So if you've got a local-based security system like Wordfence, if you're getting hit by a DDoS attack, there's nothing you can do about it. That server's going to get swamped with traffic and it's going to go down. There's nothing that Wordfence or any other local-based security can do about that. So here's another graphic. It's the last graphic I have, actually, and it's just showing cloud versus local endpoint security. I was talking about the endpoint security. In the first graphic here, in the cloud firewall, you can see that because the security is done in the cloud, and if the attacker, the bad actor, knows your exact IP address of the server, they can direct that traffic directly to that server and bypass this CDN, this kind of cloud security network. So that's a kind of issue there. Another issue is that even if all that security stuff is doing in the cloud, even though cloud security is pretty secure, there is the option that data can be leaked out of that cloud. So there is that security issue that could happen. On the other end, an endpoint firewall like Wordfence is installed locally, your site visitor and your attacker, they have to go through that security firewall. There's no other way to get around it. So again, that's a kind of positive. It can't leak any data either because it's on the server. There's nowhere else. It can't be bypassed. So that's basically what I was talking about when we talk about cloud versus endpoint security. So some other considerations, just before I jump into the questions, some other considerations to look at. Security, it's great, and it's always been a really good firm. It was acquired by GoDaddy in late 2017. It's allowed to run independently for now. However, GoDaddy does have a history of taking good things and kind of screwing them up. I think WP Curve is a good example of that. They were a fantastic kind of support entity on their own right. GoDaddy gobbled them up, and well, it's kind of not so good anymore. So at the moment, security is certainly running independently, and it seems to be fantastic. But I just wanted to put that warning out there, just for your consideration. Security as well, it's not WordPress specific. Now that can be a positive or a negative, just completely depending on your viewpoint. I think it's a plus because diversity is always a better thing when you're dealing with known and unknown threats in the security world. So they don't just cover WordPress, they cover everything. And I think that's great. That's definitely a positive for me. Other considerations as well, certainly performance. That is probably the key issue that I look at when I'm looking to install a security plugin on a client website. If performance is king, then I would always suggest that the client goes with the security cloud-based solution. Otherwise, if they're happy to have that performance hit, maybe like later on when they've got low traffic, then Wordfence would be my choice, because you get that granular level of control that you can really control what it looks at and how it scans your website, which you don't get with security because it's cloud-based. So conclusion, which one is best for your site? Well, that's totally up to you. I've outlined the pros and the cons of each. So I think you guys can make a really, really good decision based on what you think you need, what the cons are for each system, for performance, security, and really just have a look at which one you think is going to be good for your website. That's the end of the preso. Just now, I'll see what I forgot. So that's what we covered today. And I'll jump into some comments just now and see if I can answer those. So Neil, you had a question. Is there a good reason why quality WordPress hosting doesn't include for scanning automatically of all WordPress sites on shared hosting? Right. That's a great question, Neil. Thanks for that. I think pretty much all WordPress hosting companies, I think all hosting companies in general, will do some sort of level of malware scan. It's in their best interest. They certainly don't want their servers to be hacked and get infected. It's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for their reputation. It's not going to be good for their server level agreements, their SLAs either. So yes, I think all hosting companies will perform some sort of malware scanning, and more than likely they'll have a web application firewall at a hardware level as well, like dedicated machines that are just looking at that incoming traffic and making sure there's no bad stuff that's hitting those servers. So yeah, I think they do a good job, but it will be varying as well. So when you're talking about shared hosting versus VPS and all that sort of stuff, in general, these companies will be scanning incoming traffic, but maybe not at the specific level of your actual website. You might need to be responsible for that. Hi, Mike. Oh, sorry, I missed another one from Neil here. Neil says, seems to me that server-based scanning could do a better job than scanning set up on even most individual WordPress sites on a shared host. Yeah, Neil, you've got your pros and cons. Local-based security is going to be more thorough because it can scan those files at a deeper level. The cloud-based, yeah, it's not going to be able to know anything outside of the URLs that it tries to scan for your website, because it has no access to your actual server. So it could miss complete directories, complete files that are riddled with malware. But you've got to weigh that up with the performance hit. Because when I said that local scanning takes a hit on your performance, it takes a huge hit on your performance. If you look at your server logs, it will max out your CPU and your memory for as long as it's doing that file-based scan. It's a huge resource hit. So I guess it's just pros and cons for that. Yeah, but great question. Dean, hi Dean, good to have you on board. Dean says, sorry, did you talk about auditing activities in the free version of security? Yes, so the free version of security, what it does is if you've got the plugin installed and not just the remote one, so you do need the free plugin installed, every activity that happens within WordPress for users being logged in, it will record in a cloud-based storage facility. So people logging in, sessions being expired, posts being edited, plugins being updated, themes being installed, removed, all that sort of stuff, it's logged and kept up in the security cloud-based systems, which is good because it means it takes it away from your local WordPress installation. So it's not in your database, it's not increasing your database size, increasing your performance hit. And it's also good from a security point of view, in that if your website gets breached, hackers can do anything within your WordPress website. In fact, they can cover their tracks by deleting stuff in database tables. Whereas with security, and with all this login that's been offloaded up into the cloud, that means that they have no access to that. So if your site is compromised or could be compromised, you can have a look through those logs independently of your website for a forensic investigation for that. So yes, that is in the free version of security, Dean. Yeah, great question. Joey, which plugin is more likely to affect the website loading speed? Anything that's locally based. So that would be Wordfence, it would be iTheme security, it would be Better WP security, anything that's local based firewall that's checking the files on the server, then that's going to have a issue with the website loading speed. So whenever it's looking for files, whenever it's doing its scanning, then it's using up server resources such as CPU, such as RAM to do that particular scanning. And that's going to have an overall performance issue with the server and therefore your website that's running on top of the server. Security's cloud-based is not going to have such a load on your website. So it's going to mean it's going to allow your website to be faster because the server itself is not getting hammered with having to do lots of things. So I hope that answered your question there. Yep, no problem, Dean. Thanks for the question. Great. If there's any more questions, I'll try and deal with those. If not, let's just move on. Next week, I should be all right. Hopefully won't be as blocked up and missing up words. Next week, we're going to do Desert Island plugins. Basically what that is, it's just going through my favorite plugins. So the plugins that I basically can't do without, that I always install onto a WordPress website. So if you want to tune in for that, that would be great. Also as well, I'm always looking for topics. I try and keep 4 weeks in advance, but you know, please send in some new topics, some things that you think you would like to see covered in 30 minutes or less from a WordPress point of view. There's the form there. It's also in the link in the video description down below. Be a simple form. Just fill out some suggestions that I can then have a think about and address, and I'll load them up and get them scheduled for the next few weeks. That's me. Happy to connect or take questions offline. I'm on LinkedIn, maybe not so much on Instagram. I need to do a little bit more on that, but definitely on Twitter as well. You can find me as Developer Wil or Wil Brown _AU on Instagram. I don't have a slide for it, but I just want to mention that we're doing our big WordPress Sydney meetup on Monday. So if you go to the meetup page for WordPress Sydney, then you can have a look at that. We're going to be doing some live website audits, which is quite exciting and scary at the same time. And there's a form on the meetup page as well that you can fill in if you want to get your website audited live. So we've got myself, James, and Mitch. James is going to be doing the SEO audit. Mitch is going to be looking at speed, and I'm going to be looking at conversion rate optimization as well. So what sort of things you could change to maybe get kind of better engagement with your audience for that. So it'd be great if you guys can join us. That's on Monday. So this Monday coming at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. it is. And yeah, we'll do those live ones. We'll choose some websites up front and do some live audits, and it'll be fun. Be fun to see what we get. It'll just be a random number of websites. We'll maybe try and do 3 or 4, seeing how long it takes us. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Just after past, so I did it even with my blocked up nose. Let's see, Neil. Oh, that's great, Neil. It's always good to learn new stuff. I learn new stuff because I do a little bit of research on these things beforehand. I always find some things that are new, which is great. Jean, yeah, thank you so much. I hope I feel better next week too. Perrin Shanks, I'm glad you felt that was useful. And Kerry, you managed to tune in. That's great. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, I'm going to head off and I'll see you on Monday, and if not, next week. Okay, thank you, guys. Bye.